Wait, here comes a brother I know for sure can rap.
Tony Caravan.
You've been subjected to a highly sophisticated form of propaganda.
It's just what you need, and not what you don't. ROCKFLUX Live.
Yeah, it's ROCKFLUX Live at 4:07 a.m. on Friday, November 5th. Remember the 5th of November. There's a line in a John Lennon song, but it also goes back to, Britain. History. And, in that Wachowski movie, where they were wearing the masks, whatever that was called, that was brought up, I believe. Pretty sure. So,
you're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
Here I am. Here I is. It's all about quality of life is the title of this show. And I just put on the chat, Happy Friday, you made it. And yeah, we're going to get into that. The title card may be slightly confusing to some people. Game over with a teddy bear. But actually, not only is that apropos to the show, and it rhymes. But, between now, this, might as well get this out of the way, and I might repeat it later on. But I didn't even know that we had teddies for sale, apart from all these shirts, hats, hoodies, mugs, and all that other stuff, and stickers and everything. If you go under, the accessories, if you go to ROCKFLUX, if you go to my website, and you click on, the girl with the shopping thing, or any of them that'll take you to the page where you just see these square logos of then what, you don't know what you don't know, everything you know is wrong, game over, etc. And you'll notice there's an accessories area, and if you click on accessories, on some of them they have these teddy bears. You can get an everything you know is wrong, game over, there's a couple of classics. And I'm going to pick up one. They're only $19.99. Anyway, between November 5th and the 10th, that's today and next Wednesday, it's 20% off. So if you take, and some of my shirts only cost $18, $19. So, you talk $20, 20% off, it's $16. Shipping charge in there, but it's not that high. It's just cloth. Think about that. Where can you go? You can't even go to Walmart and get you couldn't get a teddy bear, for $16, let alone something that has something like freedom is fun, or you don't know what you don't know on it, or everything you know is wrong. Or then what? ? Or there's some, I've got that Christmas theme thing too, which, it's a holiday themed shirt. So check it out. It's just a weird thing, but it is game over, and we'll get into that after the news. So I'm not going to leave this one up for too long. Let's deal with some other things. So, for example, a follow-up with yesterday. This is the unfortunate ceiling in my bedroom. Okay, so this is looking up at these ceiling tiles, which are probably acoustic tiles. I don't know if they're, if the back sides of those suckers are asbestos. They could well be. Now, I've already painted this room once, but you can still see this discolorization of this white paint over what seems to be a faded paint. Well, actually, that's yesterday's job, because if you would have seen this before I did this, you would have freaked out. I had to dehumidify. The room was already at 40% humidity, and we talked about this yesterday. And this is just good, something to know. Basically, mold, mildew, that kind of stuff. It can't grow between 30 and 50% humidity. And 40% humidity is really a good number, to deal with. So I brought in a dehumidifier, had the door open, and I have a ceiling fan you can't see just beyond the that hook that's there, which has been there since I bought the house. I never bothered taking it down. I don't know. I think the previous owner had some rigged up to open the door or something like that. The door has some kind of like these hooks on it. Whereas I have a cat door underneath the door, because I think he used that as his bedroom too. The last guy who had this house. There's only 3 guys. This house is over 100 years old, around 100 years old. I'm not sure. I forget exactly. But it's approximately 100 years old. And 3 men have owned this place, over those 100 years plus or whatever. The last guy was a barber. He ran a barbershop in this room I'm in now, but downstairs from there. And he used that back room as his bedroom. And the front bedroom, which is huge, which I used to use as my bedroom, but it's too noisy and cold. I had to have an extra heat, like electric heater in there besides the radiator. That was his living room, because this room was his barbershop. So it was his work room. So I'm following in the tradition. It's not a barbershop, but it's a studio. And of course, my kitchen is turned into a bar. I kind of got a decent night's sleep last night, pretty much so. I wouldn't call it a full 8, 7-ish, 7+, which isn't bad. I mean, they say between 7 and 9 is what you should get. I think a person like me, when you're going through health issues here and there, you should try to get a full 8. But I'm on the cycle. I only have like 2. I think I have 2 amoxicillins left. So I'm done those today. I'm pretty sure it's today. It's either today or like 3 a.m. tomorrow morning. And, and then we'll take it from there for those of you following that tooth saga. But, and then, so I take it at 3. So I'm up, I got up, did the old, got ready for the morning, and here I am. But I talked about this yesterday, and like I always do on this show, I like to follow up. I was mentioning the ceiling. And so what I did was I painted some of this Kills, which is like a stain covering, because there were water stains on this ceiling, from the roof. From the attic, really, but I mean, technically from the roof, through the attic. And so I had to pull that plastic down, which is kind of stapled up there. There was some like discolorization, and which I think was like kind of mold, like stains from, not growth of mold, but just like brownish, whatever. But there was a musty smell. So maybe it was going to be just mildewy or whatever it was. But it hasn't been there lately, because in fact, yesterday with the dehumidifier in the room, I actually managed to bring the humidity down to like 38%, which is like nothing's. You know what I mean? There's nothing growing that's going to harm you. Now, of course, I was concerned about the VOCs, because I usually keep that door closed, and I have a cat door on the bottom that I just, made myself. Just, jigsawed open a thing and put a piece of cloth on either end so the cat could, go back and forth. And the reason I do that is so I could keep the door closed at night and keep the heat in. Because the problem with having an animal in a house is that it's like when you see it, and it'll probably happen today again, back and forth. They're in and out. They're constantly going to get a drink of water, going down, use a litter box, go get a snack out of their bowl. And so, inevitably what happens is, without a cat door in a place like this, in the wintertime when it's, in fact, we'll get to the weather, but just to get just in advance, I'm curious to see. Yeah, I know it was really, they're saying it's about 30 degrees. Well, it's going to go down to 28 before it's all said and done. But, when it's like below freezing, put it that way, you don't want the door open into the hallway. You want to keep the heat in your room. And what I was finding, and this is a long time ago at my last apartment, that, I was realizing, the cat keeps opening the door and I'm wondering why I'm wake up in the middle of the night and I'm like cold. And it's like, I shouldn't be cold. If you're going to pay for heat, you might as well have heat and be warm. So anyway, cat doors, that's another one of those things, owning a home, a plus about owning your own home, because you could do whatever the heck you want to. You could saw a cat door and put it on the bottom. You don't have to worry about a landlord. But anyway, this is like a catch-all. This is in case, because this was a bad spot in the attic where the roof leaks. And this was to, in case the water came down, it would catch it. And if you notice, it's kind of like tighter on the one side than it is on the other. And what I would do, I don't have one there now because I've pretty much sealed this spot up. But if we would get some kind of crazy, all day rainstorm or something, and I thought I might get another leak through there. Hope not. I would put a bucket on the floor at the end, that corresponded where, and so the water will come down and then just fall in the bucket. So I don't get a mess in the room, because the left side of that is about where my head is in the bed, or not so much my head, but the edge of the bed, and where you can see that framed thing, which is actually like a Yingling mirror frame thing. There, I have a nightstand there, and I've got all kinds of stuff on that nightstand. I got a shortwave radio. I have my Echo Dot. I have an iPad. I have a cell phone for emergency use. It basically doesn't get a really good signal, but I can like hold it up to the window. It's like all I could use for in case I needed to dial a emergency or something. Because my other phone doesn't have, the Wi-Fi phone doesn't have that service. They want you to pay $15 extra a year for that. And I'm like, I cutting corners. And I had I'll keep the pills, like I was taking these amoxicillins and, all that kind of stuff. There's a little light on there. So anyway, I didn't want water dripping down. Today I'm going to put some white duct tape along the edges. And you kind of can see, you might be able to see that these things are dipping down. It looked pretty horrific up there. But I painted a lot of this kills there, and I also put some pure 100% silicone on some semi-open areas. This is as temporary as you can get. I'm hoping to get through the winter with this. Next spring, when it's hot and I could have the windows open and all that stuff, I need to open up that area, And, when it becomes, mold mildew season, because that place, it should be dried out after this winter, I would hope. And I don't have any of those extra tiles. I don't even think they make them, but they might have them at a box store, a new version of them. Or just some kind of single piece, that I could, heck, I wouldn't even care if it was like a plywood or a luan, you know what that is, a real thin wood, something only has to be like a 1/4 of an inch tops, could, or even an 1/8, maybe even something preferably like plastic, waterproof, and then just, screw that in to the ceiling, because this is an old ceiling, so it has that, those wood slats, lathe, and, like mortar. You know how they did plastered the old walls? They had those little thin boards, and then they just plastered over it to make the walls. Yeah, it's a 100-year-old house. It's how they made houses, and the roofs are like that too. So there's plenty of these little wood things to screw into, so I could easily, rivet the thing. Use screws, rivet it up there. And preferably I could find something white. And that would be that. But yeah, that's the contraptions, that's my Rube Goldberg water device. The water, if it drips down, it slides down that plastic thing and then goes down into the bucket. And then all I have to do is drain the bucket. But the problem is, in the meantime, what's underneath there is totally rotted and destroyed away. So I put this Kills over it and some silicone to like kind of shore it up. You can still see one or two little brown spots, which I'm tempted to touch up today, but I don't think I am, because even though I left the door open and I had the dehumidifier on, there was still I think there were residual VOCs in the room last night, and I slept in that, and that can't be good for you. So, but I mean, it dried. At that humidity, not only are you can't mold or anything, mildew or anything like that grow or flourish, but at this, paint dries in 20 minutes, So, and I had the door open and a ceiling fan running all day long. So by the night, the room was pretty well close to it, but you could smell it. In other words, if someone would have walked in, they would say it smelled like somebody had recently painted. It would be like, this room has been painted recently. It had that slight smell. So that's just a follow-up on yesterday because, like I say.
You're listening to Tony Caravan Live.
And
quality, quantity, and variety.
ROCKFLUX.
Let's get this show on the road.
All right, we'll get on with the show. So enough of that. It is the Tony Caravan morning vlog, however. Photo of the day. I've been showing you the night views of the lava, and from a different angle, coming from the others to the right have been the night pictures of the shooting lava jets. Well, this is just kind of what it looks like a lot of times in the daytime. I mean, from a certain angle, you'd still be able to see lava flow. It's still coming. But I just wanted to show you that this is like constant ash. And so, we're talking since the end of September, and we're into November now. And so you've got these things going off all over the planet, just shooting this ash up. And I keep trying to explain that not only is this ash, contained within that are things like sulfur dioxide and really toxic chemicals. Forget about this, like I say, forget about 0.004 CO2. These things are poisons, all right? But it's just this constant flow of ash. Now, it's a big planet, of course, but, this ash has nowhere to go but mainly up, and it goes up and, heat rises. So it's hot ash, and it's rising up into the upper atmosphere, and it's darkening, the sun, dimming the sun. And like I said, we have an uptick in volcanic activity, and we've been having these CMEs, which is heating this magma even more, weakened magnetic field, which makes us more susceptible to that sort of thing. Cosmic rays even heating up this. We live on the crust of this molten liquid ball. And which is really amazing after 4.5 billion years that it could still be that. I mean, we talk about this as being a water planet, it's basically, this planet is water and trees, right? Water and trees. It's like people don't understand. Humans are we're nothing. We're like ants, compared to, look at the size of a tree, the size of the oceans, right? So we're nothing, But, there are multiple volcanoes, and that mountains are big. And so they're substantial. So mountains are bigger. Mountains are comprised of, most times trees, except volcanic mountains where the trees have all been burnt or melted away. And so you have lots of these volcanic cones, hills, mountains that are going off right now. And so there's a lot of soot, ash being thrown up into the air. It gets some attention, but this is a serious issue. Just like, this is a serious issue. I don't know what the heck happened. Oh, there we go. But like I say, we just got bombarded by a triple shot of these CMEs. So let's hope, none of these have been like the Carrington event, which could conceivably take out the power grid. So forget about it's not only you're going to lose your cell phone and the internet, but you're going to lose your electricity, and probably we'll all be back into the Stone Age. And the idea that's a possibility, and how fragile, like that line in a Sting song, how fragile we are, like a wheeze in there, probably from the VOCs. At this point, that's the least of my problems, Least of my problems. And, for some reason, see how the back is like lighter? You could see my book Codex. You could see the Then What book on the rack. The Game Over hat's pretty well lit. Why is that? I don't have any extra lighting on today. It's kind of weird. Some mornings it's like super dark. So anyway, what do I mean quality of life is what it's about? Well, and how does that play into Game Over? Apart from me trying to sell teddy bears, You get one with ROCKFLUX on, a ROCKFLUX shirt too. Everything you know is wrong. Great thing to give your kid. Hey, freedom is fun. I think you get a teddy bear. You don't know what you don't know. Game over. Anyway. Well, we'll get into that, as this show goes on. But let's first of all, now since we got it right. Weekend weather. Let's take a look at the weekend weather. So as you can see, those clouds, as we've passed through this entire week, have now just made it right down to, Mississippi, Georgia, South Carolina, Florida. So they're departing. They've departed the Northeast, and now I guess they'll eventually depart the Southwest or Southeast. Forget about the Northwest, you guys up there. If there's anybody watching from there, that's typical weather for you folks. But apart from some swaths of clouds making their way across the high plains and a little bit of activity over some of the Great Lakes, we're getting to that point now where the Great Lakes, you get lake effect snow. Because if it's, the water's still warmer than the temperature, but if the temperature is in the 20s or, below freezing, and the wind blows through, it creates its own little thing. That's why places like Buffalo, were notorious. And I remember growing up, those places people would be just trapped in Buffalo. They'd get they measure the snow, used to measure the snow up there in feet. That's why I have to laugh because, like last year, I talk about it a couple of times. These people who, anyway, that's pretty much, what it looks like. People who were blaming nor'easters on climate change. And I'm going hey man, you haven't lived long enough to understand, the winter. But anyway, in my neck of the woods, like I say, it's 30. By the time it hits 7 a.m., sunrise isn't until 7:50 today. And, so it's almost close to 8 o'clock. But then this Sunday, we turn the clocks back. Don't forget, we have to do that stupid thing. So technically, sunrise then will be like 6:50. And then eventually it'll be like 7 a.m., because it's still up leading towards December 21st, which is the shortest day. But, I could live with that. That's still dark enough for me, But be that as it may, it looks like the temperature is going to the sun's going to be out every day, and we've clear skies. So for the next 3 nights in my area, which, like I say, is somewhere up in the east of the Ohio Valley, mid-Atlantic states, close to one of the entrances of the Northern Appalachian Trail, that region, general region up there. It's going to be 28 at night as a low for a couple days. Sunday goes up to around freezing, a little above freezing. But so far at this juncture, it's looking like we might get Monday and Tuesday, the temperatures might get into the high 50s and even break 60 Tuesday, and the overnight might be high 30s and break 40 on Tuesday. So right now, who knows if this is going to happen or not. But right now, Tuesday's looking like it's going to be what they used to refer to as Indian summer, which I guess you should say indigenous people's summer or something. But it's kind of late for Indian summer. So it looks like potentially a fluke day where it'll be sunny 64 and overnight only 45. And quite frankly, I'm all for that, And these things happen. When you look at the record books, it's weird. Like, all times throughout the year, there are ridiculous records. Like, there are 80-degree days that happen in, October and November or something. Or there are freezes, as late as June and stuff. And people that who, like I say, they cherry pick numbers or they talk about this, that, the other. They're just messing with your minds. Because they're not giving you the big picture. It's the problem with revisionism and everything like that. And I was watching something briefly yesterday, and then I moved on to some other things. But I wanted to, I'm trying to keep my notes nearby. I have a couple notes today. One of them was a 20% off all my shirts and hoodies and mugs and hats, stickers and teddy bears and all kinds of stuff. Men's and women, all sizes, from small to 4XL. Not on everything, mind you, but, if you mess around on my site, on the ROCKFLUX channel, and just click around, you'll see all kinds of things. Like I say, you get like accessories. I don't see how a teddy bear is an accessory, but I don't care. It's, it works for me. But what I'm getting at is...
Hey, buddy, how's it going? Your old pal Ovaltine. Want to say hi?
Hi, Budgie.
Budgie is the name that other person calls the cat. Well, I'm doing okay today. I'm doing better today than I did yesterday. And so, it's one of those things. I was watching Tim Pool. I noticed that he got stricken down this past weekend, I guess, or this week, with The Thing, which is still out there, which seems to me to defy logic, And if it doesn't defy logic, if this is a new, dynamic or a paradigm shift in the way things are going to be as far as our, what's going to affect our quality of life and health, then we need to be focused on this more so than just worrying about that, and really dealing with it on a everyone on deck approach. All hands on deck. Because 2.5 years, which, like I say, we know that now from, interviews with the director of intelligence and the director of the CIA, previous CIA, who've gone on record that the Communist Chinese have admitted that, which means that Event 201 that they held in the fall of 2019 wasn't an event about, see, no one's talking about this either. Originally, a lot of people, so-called conspiratorial type of things, were saying that, and I myself was drawn into that idea too, because it was too coincidental, that basically they held this Event 201, which was this idea of a coronavirus mutating and becoming a pandemic, and what they would have to do, steps that would have to be taken, right? And many of those things that had eventually came to be were out of that Event 201. If you could find those videos of Event 201, I mean, they may well have been completely scrubbed from YouTube and the internet. I know the people that were talking about it, were all banned and stuff, who were bringing you that stuff. Because people had the PowerPoints and had pictures of the presentations and the people who were sitting at the table. And it's all the same players that are here now. And, the pharmaceuticals, big pharma people were represented, and, these government types, bureaucrats. Well, what's interesting about this whole thing is that now we learn that this thing happened before Event 201, which means Event 201 wasn't a what-if planning center or planning event. It was like an actual meeting, global meeting of all these government, NGOs, pharmaceutical people, et cetera, to deal with something that they knew, but they weren't telling the general public about. And this story is completely under the radar, but it's out there, right? Because you have the Sky News interview with the director of intelligence, right? And the former, the CIA and the former national director of national intelligence, going on record that the Communist Chinese, they were aware of this in the summer of 2019, and Event 201 happened in the fall. So it was not, it actually was the planning session on what to do about it, but it was presented to us, and still to this day, as if it was just some coincidental meeting that what if a such and such a thing occurred. And the sad part about that is, if you think about the fact that this was known in the summer of 2019, they were meeting in the fall of 2019. This is before Thanksgiving of 2019, before Christmas, before any of that, before the Chinese holiday, when all those people traveled and came back then eventually in end of December, January to the U.S. and went to it, you know, because Italy was hit really bad because a lot of people went there. That this whole thing could have been, you know, avoided. So I can't help, going back, and I always use this term, that Occam's razor term. But I can't help but go back to say, when you take away all of, all the other possibilities, what you're left with is the obvious one. And it seems from the data that we now have, again, nobody's really seems to be talking about, because people are either tired of talking about it, right? Or they're afraid to, or they don't know, they can't, they screw up, like they don't know how to like talk around it. Okay, I try to. Of course, I'm throttled, so that's their way of keeping me out of the way. But yeah, it looks like, doesn't look like it's it's almost obvious that this is like I say, you've got two choices. There's either a paradigm shift in the way, in infectious diseases and going forward our future, right? Because this thing defies, this length of time is just too, this thing should have fizzled out by now, after 2.5 some years. Mutations usually are not, they don't get worse. They get, it fizzles, gets. And with the vast amount of people that have been inoculated or who have had it, that we're way above what we've been told the herd immunity numbers were necessary. At one point they were saying, 50, 60%. Now it's like into the 90s. Now everybody must be, including, So why are they so anxious about doing this with children? It seems to me that they know this is, I'm convinced this was a bioweapon, and I think it's still being released. And, guys like Tim Pool won't want to admit this, but, he just got it. And I watched his entire story where he told about his, taking the kitchen sink thing like Rogan did and got over it, though he was still talking and he had this nasal thing. He could, he still had some residualness to it, but he was, it worked. And, that was scary to me. I said that to a friend of mine yesterday. I said, 2.5 years on, that people could be getting hit this bad. And, he had, in his office, there was like a couple of people who got it, had the thing, and some didn't. But, that's not a factor, So I don't know what that, what they're even, pumping in. Is it like I said, is it just a saline solution? I have no idea. And then I was watching a congressional hearing. See, people don't watch and listen to these things. And I was watching something, and I don't want to name the names of the people because, these are all like every one of these triggers some kind of algorithm or something. But two major player on the bureaucratic side and a major player on the congressional side who's trying to get to the bottom of this, one of the few. And they were talking about that one of the other things that is known and I guess has been cleared as far as being declassified is that there's another one that they were working on that had something like a 15 to, I don't know what the upwards was, if it was 15 to 30% or 15 to 20 some percent mortality rate. See, this current one at best is like 1%. All right, in the worst case scenarios, It depends on, your comorbidities and your age and all kinds of factors, right? For some, in some instances, it's 0.01%, mortality rate. In others, it's like 0.02, or in some, it's 0.1. But in others, it's like 1%, right? It depends on, your state. There's still the point of 99% survival rate. But apparently there's been this declassified thing that at the same lab, there's one that has a 15 plus, and like I said, I forget the highest number. Somebody just recent in a Senate hearing, a senator, brought this out. So apparently it's declassified. That there's another one that if that were released, it would have a 15 to 20 or 30 mortality rate. I mean, that's insane, man. That's insane. So, like I say, it's Occam razor, and so quality of life, we have to reconsider our quality of life and the importance of that. Someone came on probably because they saw the cute teddy bear and then heard me talking about this and they're like confused. Sorry, folks, it takes a long time to get, to pull all these things together. But this is a part of it. See, in other words, we're focusing right now on, politics. Like if you look at the news, and I have today's news here, let's just see. This is like from Google News. All right. They're still talking. This is how insane this is. They just won't let these things go away. Arrest illustrates how the Steele dossier was a political dirty trick orchestrated by Hillary Clinton. New York Post. Durham charges Steele dossier subsource with 5 counts of making false statements to the FBI. Yahoo News. Analyst who aided Trump-Russia dossier charged with lying. CNN. Russian analyst who was sourced for Steele dossier arrested and charged with lying to the FBI. Okay, so you got CNN, Yahoo, and your Fox and New York Post all reporting this story because it happened. They can't go against it. All right. House Democrats vote expected on infrastructure bill. Biden calls Democrats. AOC says Democrats lost in Virginia because of super moderated campaign, whatever the heck she's talking about. Right? And CNN, Virginia election results is not vindication of Trump. And then there's another one, family outrage at racial makeup of jury of there's some slaying. I don't follow the news, so I don't even care. All right. I mean, I care about anybody who's harmed, but I don't care about these news things. My seat, look, I'm turned into a little person. It's crazy, man. Buy 100 teddy bears and I'll get a new chair. Give them out as gifts to people. That would be a really cool thing to get the point across. You don't have to put game over on it. Like I say, you could have you don't know what you don't know, or just freedom is fun, or everything you know is wrong, or the ROCKFLUX logo. Teddy bears. Picnic time for teddy bears. I told you I saw Jerry Garcia and the Grateful Dead from a skybox in the, in Washington, D.C. stadium, before he died. And, those skyboxes are neat. They're like 2-level apartments, condos is what they're like. And except the balcony looks out over onto the stage. It was great. Yeah, did that. Went there in a limo. Red cart, like almost a red carpet. You take an elevator up to and it looks like you're in a hotel, and you go in and there you are, and you can look through the room and there's your balcony, and we were like pretty close to the stage too. But anyway, Christmas time or picnic time for teddy bears. But what I wanted to get at is when I talk about quality of life, so we have this apparently this new dynamic, or I'm talking paradigm shift, because there's something going on. Things don't last 2.5 years and get worse. Like I say, with this like Tim Pool thing, like, people, 35-year-old guy nearly dying from this. That's totally out of everything that 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, those type of people weren't even being considered as even vulnerable, right? And now there's this forcing of they want to give from 5 to 12-year-olds and stuff, and I think they're close to getting approval for that, or they already do. So they know something. And like I say, from that Sky News interview, it's clear they know this thing's 2.5 years old, that event that happened after that. Now, what we have to deal with here is this is the news. This isn't my news. This isn't news customized for me. This is just going to Google News. This is what came up. So why are people look at the focus of society is, right? This is the focus of society. A former president on a thing that everybody knew was a fake dossier from like almost day one. Because it was a political stunt. People knew that. That's like 4 years old or so. No, what am I saying? It's like 5 years old news. An infrastructure bill, talk of an infrastructure bill which is an exercise in futility. Because they want to eliminate carbon-based fuels. And like I've said, and I don't want to be repetitive and I don't want to be long-winded on it, but there's no way you can fix the infrastructure of the U.S. or any place without carbon-based fuels, which means they're going to have to increase production of carbon-based fuels, increase the importing of carbon-based fuels, and either way, increase the use of carbon-based fuels by many-fold. Because you're talking about if you're going to be fixing roads, bridges, right? Various structures, buildings, high-speed rail lines, all these pie in the sky things they're talking about doing. They're going to require heavy equipment that runs on carbon-based fuels. And so how in the hell and why are they even talking about spending money on it? See, it's a contradiction. And who cares what AOC says and about politics and some racial makeup of a jury, because, this stuff goes on every day. So where's our quality of life? And that's why I say game over. Because the focus of the corporatocracy, the technocracy, if you want to call it the government, it's fine, but it's a bureaucracy. It's, it's big tech, big data, big pharma, big ag, big media, military, industrial complex, and the financial interests, the Fed and, the central banking system in Wall Street. I mean, that's this country. That scared somebody else off. And so, it's game over because, it seems that there's some contagion floating around now that's been floating, that the government or corporatocracy or, all of the above or aforementioned were aware of 2.5 years ago, didn't bother telling us, had meetings about it, right? And now it's just getting worse. And they don't know, what they won't admit to us is that they don't know what to do about it. See, the whole idea the whole justification for them having these labs is that, and their excuse for doing it and funding this kind of stuff is saying, well, in the instance that something like this were to happen, we would have studied it and have a way of curing it, right? But they don't. They don't. So that's a lie. No, these are bioweapons labs, and the purpose of them is to create bioweapons. It's like the arms race, any other arms race, nuclear, bio, space race. Space race in terms of space, using satellites for, war purposes, right? Surveillance, counterintelligence and all that kind of stuff. See, because where's the cure? It's game over. Where's the where's the it should be, everything should be about our quality of life. Life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, we should, that should be the focus. Instead, people are focused on the media obsession with politics. I mean, this is, I didn't cut and paste anything. This isn't like personalized for me. This is just, I went to Google and that was the top of the page and I did a screen capture and I put it on here. 5-year-old news, something about an impossible infrastructure bill that they can't do because it requires so much carbon-based fuels and they're against carbon-based fuels. So that's a hypocritical impossibility exercise in futility. And then talk about some jury and some political campaign. Like, who cares? What does that have to do with the quality of life for us? Right? For the people of the country. Criminals commit crimes and, go through the criminal justice system all the time. Right? Sometimes juries are weighted one way or the other, and lawyers have the right to pick, to say, to get rid of certain jurors. That's the nature of, the justice system. Do you ever watch Law and Order? Boom, right? That's just it. It's not news. So it's game over because I don't see anybody focusing on quality of life. And then, like I said, I'm all in to, technology. And like I want AI to be put into these voice assistants, right? So that they could be conversational. I don't need some robot walking around sitting on a sofa. I think that's goofiness. I think computers should stay in. That's why the problem with, computers should stay in the air, right? In your speaker system, in like that, right? But I mean, I'm all for the Ray-Ban glasses and stuff like that, But there's no move, so it's either fantasy, VR, AR, AI, that thing. There's still like 11 million, that's the official number of people who are unemployed, or who that not unemployed. There's more than that. No, 11 million jobs available that unemployed people and other people won't take. 11 million jobs that aren't being filled right now. Think about that. And, and people are being stricken down by this thing still. And there's talk about there's one lurking from perhaps the same lab or the same, NIH funding or whatever that has the potential to take 15 to 30% of the people out in the world. I mean, do you understand that? 10% of our population would be 33 million. 20% would be like 66 million people. 60 million people. 50 million people even would be like ridiculous, would be insane. And not to mention, what something of that magnitude that has the potential to take 50 million people out, what another 100 million who would probably be like seriously ill or whatever. It would be like, talk about quality of life. It would be devastating. Everyone. I mean, it would basically, well, it would destroy civilization as we know it. It would be the civilization killer. So, and the media is focused on a makeup of a single jury. That was what I was talking about before. It's like when you have this disappearance or some homicide somewhere. It's like there's 20,000 of them every year. Most of them go unsolved. And the media focuses on some particular one because it fits a demographic profile. And so now they're focusing on some trial because it fits some demographic profile that they could use to divide and conquer people. Because that's what it is. They don't want to talk about quality of life. See, it's game over for quality of life. Now, you don't have to be negative, not to be negative. I mean, you're still, freedom is fun, and you can detach yourself as much as possible from this insanity. Get free, those tentacles, get free of as many of those tentacles as possible. They're trying to draw you into this. One of those tentacles is big media. One of those tentacles is big tech. And, the smartphone, all that kind of stuff. And the materialism, getting caught up in buying endless bright and shiny objects and spending money and getting in debt. And being, in other words, owning your soul to the company store. Basically, you're selling your soul to the corporatocracy is what it is. And the corporatocracy is the government. The corporatocracy are most Western governments, and they are all overseen by what can best be explained, the Davos set, the World Economic Forum, is an organized crime syndicate. So, if you live in a neighborhood that's, that there's some gang is gang controlled, or like in the old days, mob controlled or something, you got to get out of that neighborhood. And it's a lot easier than you think to do that. You just have to basically, think common sense and just make the move. Like I say, you can survive. It's like all these homeless people in San Francisco. But I don't care what people say in New York streets and different places. They want to be there. I mean, except for the ones who have genuine mental illnesses, in which this country and as taxpayers, we have put so much funding into mental health care for people, free. Right? There are so many things available. But the majority of those people, they want to be there in those tents on the street and doing all, being there. Because they can leave anytime they want to. All they got to do is hop in a bus. All right? Some of these people panhandle and make hundreds of dollars, if not $1,000 a week. Now, it's like one of those stories that's underreported. But I've seen reports and, them go up to the tents and the people talk about, no, I'm not, I'd never want to give up this. They panhandlers, they go out. People forget that in like a wealthy area, you put out a thing and you look pathetic and people, they throw dollars or $5 bills in your hat or your box or something like that. In the old days, you had to play guitar or something like that on Venice Beach or something, and then people would give you something, but not no more. A 100 people pass you along the street. If they just throw in pocket change and dollar bills and the occasional $5 by somebody, you got $100. You do that 5 days a week, you brought $500 in. That's $2,000 a month. Weekends off and nights free. Why would they want to leave? Right? They have no rent, no bills. They just have a tent. That's how a lot of those people are. This coffee's like gotten like it needs to be heated up or something. I tell you. And it's warm in this room. So you think it would stay, it would have stayed hot. Hasn't been that long, really. So, I bring this up all the time, and when I'm talking about quality of life is you can have quality of life even at the poverty level. Excuse me. And I'm at the poverty level. And apart from, like I say, I've had I've had a lot of illnesses. All right. And, this seems to be the paradigm shift that that has occurred in, I guess, in the world. Is it the world? And so, there's just these bugs. And who knows, maybe it was the abuse of antibiotics, maybe it's modern medicine, maybe it's these people messing with bioweapons labs. Who knows what has caused this? But the point is, disease, it's big business. People are making hundreds of billions of dollars a year on the current thing that is affecting people. And younger people now are starting to get this thing and they're getting deathly ill. And even people who have gotten, the, thing that they're pushing still seem to be getting this thing. And their excuse is, well, at least, but they don't necessarily require hospitalization or they get a milder case. Well, the point is, but they're still getting it, and not all of them. And then some people have side effects from that too. The point is, I don't care about that, and I'm not commenting on that. I'm talking about the fact that the thing exists 2.5 years on. And that heart disease is still the number one killer, killing 600-some thousand people a year, and cancer's killing 600-some thousand people a year is the number 2 killer. And that a couple of million people die every year of things that potentially can be preventable. So forget that, even this new thing that's been added to the mix, right? That takes us up to maybe 2.5 million a year. But then again, we don't know if you would factor in all these other things, it could well be 3 million people a year dying of preventable things that should be preventable if our society would focus on the quality of life instead of, the media being obsessed with the most idiotic things in the world. Everything there is idiotic, including the racial makeup of that jury. Who cares? Who gives a shit? Right? Who gives a shit? All right? Do you know how many trials there are in the United States? Forget about, this is a high-profile trial. No, it isn't. You mean, some person is more important than another person? No. It's like I say, when they find these demographics, some profile of some individual that there's a homicide or something like that, and suddenly it becomes news on all the stories, and they milk it for a month or two. And they forget about the other 20 million people that, were killed and their murder went unsolved, and their families and the suffering of their friends and family and all that. This idea that, this story, because big media wants to make it important, or that politics, right? AOC, politics, a fake infrastructure bill that can't possibly work because carbon-based fuels are required to run the heavy equipment to fix roads, bridges, railways, and all that stuff. So who are they trying to kid? What are they going to do? Order oil from Russia and get back to getting oil from OPEC? And who cares about a 5-year-old fake dossier story that people knew was fake 5 years ago? Right? And it's been dragged through Congress and the media for 5 years. Over 5 years now. You see what I mean? So the big media is the culprit behind all this, because they're the ones who are bringing us down. They're running deflection, for the corporatocracy that just wants to profit on our illnesses, right? And our unhappiness and our frustrations. So in that respect, it's game over. And so if you want a better quality of life, you have to do it you're on your own. You're on your own. It's like I said, here, fixing my bedroom ceiling. It's a leaky roof. I bought a cheap house. And that's like the first stage. It actually, at least it's starting to look clean. The next time, I'm not going to attack it again today because I don't want the VOCs. I can't be sleeping in that kind of stuff. So today's going to be, it was dry yesterday, but I'm not going to, there's a couple spots up there that need some touching up and some caulking between some areas and this, that, the other. I'm actually even going to put some duct tape around there too. Wife's a white duct tape. Clean it up, make it sterile, clean, dry, all that sort of thing. But, it's, hey, I didn't want to do it. I didn't feel good yesterday. When I woke up yesterday, my heart rate was pushing was 119, was probably had continued to rise to be over 120. That's double my normal heart rate. Okay? Double. In fact, I don't want to kill the battery on this thing, but I've got my blood pressure, heart rate monitor here. Let me get rid of this thing. And in this instance, I am going to lower myself because you're supposed to keep this thing above your heart. So hopefully these batteries are still strong enough. And we'll see what we are at today live at 5:15 a.m. And I know this thing is close to accurate because I did it right before I went to the doctors the other day. And when they took my blood pressure and everything, it was within 1 or 2 points. So it's not perfect, but it's a fairly accurate thing. And I do that all the time just to test it. So yeah, like I said, I'll see if I could show you these numbers. Let's see if we get the right angle. So my blood pressure is 108/64, which is basically low. And my heart rate is 66. And there's no thing on the left-hand side, if you have an irregular heartbeat, that usually shows up. So yesterday, I had irregular heartbeat, and it was close to 120. I probably went up to over 120 or whatever. But see, today, now I've got basically low blood pressure. Right? And where's that thing? I have it somewhere here. I don't know where it is, but I'm going to find it. You bear with me. Here it is. Let me turn this off, save these batteries. The thing is, this presses your arm pretty much. So like here is the thing. So as you can see, ideal blood pressure, right? And I was like, what, 108/68. So I was on the low side. I wasn't low blood pressure. I was in the green area. You see that? I was in the green. I was almost right in the center of like ideal blood pressure, right? And sitting still, and even getting worked up on this show and stuff, but sitting still to have like a, that's not bad, and sometimes I have my heart rate is even lower than that, which is good because that means your heart's not forcing the pump, So that means your arteries, like the harder the heart has to work to pump blood through your body. So that's the weird thing about this stuff that's going on right now and health and why I talk about quality of life and stuff. And that's why I do these live shows. I mean, I just did a live blood pressure and heart rate thing for you. And like I say that, I went to the doctor's office, I took it, walked next door to the doctor's office and got the same test with their professional equipment. And the numbers varied by like 1. Like this was 108, might have been 109 over there, or 10. It was like 128. The other day it was like 128/70 or something like that, which is still ideal blood pressure. And my heart rate was around the same, or lower. But yesterday morning, I was like, if I bent down, I was messed up. What did I do yesterday different that I did the day before? Nothing. Day before, I went for a walked almost a mile or two, picked up some stuff, ate garlic in my food, high fiber breakfast, took the same pill, amoxicillin thing, nothing different. Today, had high fiber breakfast, Actually slept in that stupid with VOCs in my room, The cat has emerged, so where there may be some coughing. That's from the VOCs. But it was like the other day when I felt really bad a couple of days ago, and I'm thinking, okay, when I was cold sweat, I had to take this pill, and stuff. But I took my temperature, I've got a digital thermometer, and my temperature always runs like about almost a point lower. Like I'm like 97 point something. So 98.6, I'm like 97.6. I'm always like, And I was right around that same thing, So I didn't have a fever. In fact, my temperature was right around what it normally is, like my normal thing. And I've gone to hospitals and that's been my temperature. So I know my digital thermometer that I put under the tongue is accurate. And if you have stuff like that, that's how you test it. You know what I mean? If you're going to an appointment where they're going to give you, the basic test, well, take your test right before you go because they're going to do it. And, if you can't remember the numbers, jot them down and then, and then know. Because you don't want them to be, if they're off, then, then get rid of your equipment, because it's, you don't want to have false sense of, of being healthy. Same with the thermometer, make sure that, it's tested. When you test it and then you go to somewhere else where you get your temperature tested, that it's the same. or within like a decimal point, but not a point off, because that, the difference between 98.6 and 99.6 is a low-grade fever. And a low-grade fever will sometimes give you a headache and stuff. That's why people, just from my, experience, personal experience, I'm not giving you, is that I've had many a doctor tell me that, if you've had a fever, that, where I've had a fever, and when I used to get the flus, I don't get them anymore. But when I used to get the flu, I get the flu every now and then, and I've had doctors, I'd say, I have a headache, and they say, well, if you have a low-grade fever, you'll get a headache. You can get a headache. And so this thing, is fever is one of the things they test you, that is they're always testing to see if, you have a fever. And so it makes sense that these people complain of having a headache. But what I'm trying to get at is that quality of life is health, is happiness, right? It's, and that everything you look at today and, that you're exposed to, whether it's what they're doing with children in the school systems, which are like indoctrination systems, or what the media is, is shoving down people's throats, right? It's all anti-quality of life, right? And not, for your well-being and happiness. And that because you're being bombarded with this stuff, you have to follow your bliss. You have to find happiness, and like I say, freedom is fun. You have to be able to, break away from all of this stuff that's you're being bombarded with. I mean, it's literally from the cradle to the grave now, is the way it's set up. People have a child, and they go back to work. And the child's in preschool, infant care, preschool, all this stuff. And then they're into college and accumulating debt, and they get out, and there's 11 million jobs available. And apparently all these people that are carrying around this massive amount of college loan debt, they either don't qualify for those jobs or they don't want to take them or something like that. And you've got all these people homeless. You've got this disease floating around for 2.5 years. And the best they can say is to give you a thing for it. Nobody's curing it. And then these people get it, and there is some things that will cure it, supposedly, allegedly. I don't know. I don't have firsthand experience, just secondhand experience and anecdotal stories that I've heard. But who the hell wants to have to go through that, suffer? Watch Tim Pool talk about, him or the Rogan story or something. I mean, those things, that's not something I'm looking forward to. So far I've been lucky. I have been tested. I was tested right in the heart of it in 2020, and I tested negative. And then a year later, this past summer, I had a CT scan of my thorax, which included my lungs, and I actually have it here, and let's see if I can find the right one. Just to give you an example, I think it was in this one. No, actually, this is the CT scan of the brain, which is didn't look too good. No, it's actually on my online. I could read that to you. But anyway, what it said was basically that the lower lungs were clear. you know. And when I went to the doctor on Wednesday, she did, you know, got the stethoscope and made me do the deep breathing thing. And she was particularly like doing a lot of checking the lower level of lungs and to see the capacity to, you know, that if you're, you know, because I mean, that's another sign of this thing. It kind of like goes down there and gets crazy, and they call it some kind of storm, cyto something storm or something. And then you could end up with all kinds of other complications, of course, depending on your comorbidities and then the heart, et cetera, et cetera. But she was checking that out after hearing my story about having these problems. But then you get a day like today, and I do this thing live, and you see that, you know, according to the basic statistics that a doctor will take you through, I'm looking okay. Which brings me to, I don't want, you know, let's get to the music feature of the day before I get too carried on. And this follows through with what I'm talking about today, because this song was on my mind. I was going to have I will listen to it later when I'm having lunch or something. I'll have them play it for me. This is another obscure album, Hall & Oates. Now, I almost think I brought this up before for some reason. Like I may have presented this before, and if I did, I apologize. Or I just may have. It just, for some reason, it looks so familiar to me. I mean, at one time I owned it. I lost everything from the last building, and that was another disaster. And you got to watch shows from 6 months ago to hear about that. I lost everything. All my classic album collection and stuff like that. But anyway, this is a classic Hall & Oates album, No Goodbyes. And there's a song on here called I Want to Know You for a Long, Long Time. And, you know, and there's a couple other classics on here. This is classic Hall & Oates in the early days, all right? This would be pre-MTV, I think, even, right? So, you know, before that, you know, because MTV changed a lot of things, you know, and the you know, the 80s, you know, as the 80s progressed, you know, you had this, well, it wasn't just, you know, big hair bands and, you know, that, and then eventually towards the end, it was the, you know, the Seattle sound and alternative. But I mean, as MTV, you know, the first part of the 80s and stuff, you had this, the songs were more performance pieces, you know, and it was like big production, not necessarily big producing. If you gather me, you know what I'm trying to get at. In other words, they were big productions, right? You know, high powered, you know, even made and written almost with videos in mind, you know, kind of thing. Because, you know, the influence of the record companies and the people, the industry, right? Because artists were, like I said the other couple of days ago or yesterday, they were product, you know, right? They used to refer to it as product. I remember J.J. Jackson, who I spoke to a couple of times on the phone. I never met him in person, but I have talked to him when he used to be a DJ out in L.A. on a station out there that was a really good station. He had a really good show on a station. I talked to him a couple times. But one time I remember him on MTV referring to, you know, product, because that's how it was called in the industry, you know. But anyway, this is prior to that. This wasn't, you know, this was not big, you know, big production MTV type of, you know, in mind. This is just classic songwriting, classic Hall & Oates. And the song I Want to Know You for a Long, Long Time is on there. And it's a pretty good song. It's a good song. And this album is a good album. So, you know, I just thought I'd feature it for the day. Check it out. And if you don't check out the album, like I say, if you have these voice assistant things, music services and stuff, I speak good about them every day because, I mean, despite the fact that I have 10,000 digital songs or more, there's still so much stuff I don't have. Think about how much music there is. Really, think about it. How much music? How many songs? Because here's how I'll tell you that. Give you an example. If I look at my, call up my music, I could just do it even here. This doesn't have much listed on it. Okay. There's only 1,473 songs on this audio computer. All right. And it says 4.2 days of music.
Surprise, surprise, surprise.
So now put that into perspective and think about music going back like 100 years, right? Or more. You go back to some classic, like roots, rhythm and blues, and, that kind of stuff, straight on up through, everything. So 10,000 songs, you know what I mean? How many songs have been written? Hundreds of thousands of songs. So the idea of having, these music services and voice assistants really do play, are almost necessary if you are really into music. Because you think of a song, like I woke up this morning thinking of this song, right? And then I realized, I used to have that song on an album, and I had to double check to see that it was on the No Goodbyes album. And so I just pulled up the album graphic, and there it is. But the idea, this is about quality of life show, and, and about health, which is quality of life. Happiness, freedom is fun. This is all quality. We're talking quality of life. And, and I want to know you for a long, long time. I don't want to be stricken down by something. Right. Right. And that's that whole idea, and so it's an upbeat idea, but it's a true feeling, that people have, I mean, life is short. I think that's a line in this song, even, life is short, or something like that. And, and the idea is that, you got what you got, and you have to, you have to enjoy it. And, when you have a good day, like I say this all the time, and I do mean it, you have to stop and say, today's a good day, or today I feel okay. Today I don't feel like I'm going to pass out. Today I don't have whatever, and then it's like this, you just got to pick yourself up. And even if you're not feeling well, I had to fix that crazy roof ceiling thing, right? It had to be done because next week it's going to, there'll be the inevitable day where it gets up, according to my weather forecast, next Tuesday, it might go up to 60 and the overnight 45, which means the humidity in my bedroom isn't going to be 39, 40. The humidity might shoot up to 53, or something like that, or more. My bathroom is the next room over. I take a shower, even with an exhaust fan on or something like that, inevitably, there's going to be humidity in the house. If it's 60 some degrees, if it's 60 outside, or, the humidity could pop up there. So you don't want any me. I don't want any possibility of mold or anything. So I had to attack this issue while there's no, in a humidity situation, where it can't live or grow, and kill everything, and disinfect with an anti-mold, mildew, spray and then use this Kills paint to cover whatever. I didn't get every spot, as you can see, but like I say, I'm not going to hit that today because I don't want the VOCs, right? But I will finish it. So freedom is fun, all right? And you've got to be free. And I have people I know who are older, right? Like 68 years old. An individual, I'm sure, who's not watching this show, who is 68 years old, was like on my back and giving me advice and looking for do this, these projects, little projects, to bring in an extra $1,000 or so here and there. Now, this individual, between this individual and this individual's wife, they both worked their entire lives and have paid into like Social Security, which means they're both going to get the max. You know, I don't know what the maximum is. Let's find out here. Let's see. New window. Maximum Social Security benefit. Examples. Oh. 1987. Let's go up to the present. 2022. Monthly benefits. Retirement age at 66. Because these individuals, I think, are going to retire at 66. You got to be kidding me. Initial in 2022, $3,200 if you retire at 66. That's the maximum. And I bet you both of these people are eligible for the maximum, this couple. Okay? You could find that on the Social Security site if you have doubts. Now think about that. Now say they don't get the full 32. Say they get $3,000. That's $6,000 a month. All right. That's $72,000 a year. All right. Now you're 66. All right. You own your house. You own your car. These individuals probably have 401ks, and some savings, right, et cetera. And the 401k might be $250,000 or something like that. And they're not living on beach homes and, necessarily or whatever. So the idea is that I tell people this all the time. The average mortality rate is like 77 now in the U.S. So people are retiring, like holding on to like 66 and a half. That's what it is. See, like younger people can't retire at 66 and a half. The age keeps going up like generational. I mean, there's like people who are in their 20s now today, even if there will be Social Security for them, or if the planet will still be here if we don't have, a CME just, wipe us out, which could happen. By the way, the year 2012 was actually miscalculated. It's actually 2024 is 2012, the end of the Mayan calendar, just in case you didn't know that. That's like the ongoing thing now by multiple sources are bringing that out. The calculations were off. But anyway, so, you're retiring at 67. The young people can't retire till they're 70. All right, or higher. But people right now, so 66 and a half, 60, 66, whatever it is. So it's basically, 67 years old. So you got 10 years, statistically, right? As far as you got basically 10 years to live. You might, some people make it to 80. My dad died at 80. My mom's still alive, but, God bless her. You know, she's actually been had to go in the hospital. She's 88. All right. But I mean, you know, she's really had, you know, quite a life. But, you know, she's an exception to the rule, really. But like my dad is an example, and many people, like a lot of people, they do kind of push it to 80. But, you know, some people, they keel over at younger ages. You know, that's why the average is 77. You know, there's people who are in their 90s, and there's people who, you know, keel over in their 50s. But statistically, the odds are you retire at 67, and this is about quality of life, and you're a couple or whatever, and you've got $72,000 plus a couple of $100,000 in retirement money and a place to live and a car to drive. What the heck are you planning to do? All right. You're not a billionaire, so, you know, you're not going to be flying around the world and going anywhere. And, you know, those days are gone anyway. You know, mentioned it yesterday at the climate summit. Someone pointed out there were 400 private jets at that climate summit to just show the hypocrisy, you know, how much carbon-based fuels jets use, right? There were 400 private jets there. Now, these are billionaires that go to these things because this, like I say, this whole quality of life thing, they're just like, they're coming at us from every level. They hate us, right? That's why it's game over. But, you know, hear me out here. So it's like, why people just don't retire at 62, those who can, take less, because the amount of time, in other words, the extra money you get at 66.6, you will never make it. You would only make up that amount of money, the difference. It would take you till your death. Do you see? So in other words, you retire at 62. I was trying to explain this to somebody. I said he was thinking about waiting until they're 66 and a half. This is a totally different person. And I'm going, you're talking about 4.5 years of getting X amount of money per month. All right? That's 4.5 years of income. And so, yeah, it's less than you would get if you waited until 66 and a half, but that's money you got. And you have freedom, and freedom is fun. And you can have a quality of life while you can still do things before you start, you know, having arthritis or something. You know, the older you get, it doesn't matter. You know, so like I said yesterday, and I talk about it even with my trials and tribulations with health issues. Some people are lucky, you know, but there is no, you know, there is no magic formula. There is no diet. There simply isn't. You could exercise and eat healthy and be stricken down with something. I mean, that was that whole thing with, I don't want to keep talking about Tim Pool because I don't know the guy. But one thing he mentioned was that he doesn't smoke or drink, and he said he eats fairly well. You know, he eats healthy. And he got stricken down with this thing like an 80-year-old, you know, the thing. And ended up taking the kitchen sink thing to, you know, to survive. So it, you know, that goes against it. I have a friend who's an extreme athlete who ended up was in the best shape you could possibly imagine. The guy was just like insane. All right. You know, as far as his strength, you know, his agility, his ability, climb mountains, and adventurer. Had open heart surgery a year or so ago. I mean, now he's recovered pretty quick because he was really healthy and he's back at it. But I mean, do you want your chest cut open? Your rib cage opened up and have open heart? I mean, you know what I mean? So there's no, and like I say, I've watched testimonials by people who were, vegans and vegetarians, and they, got deathly ill. But then at the same time, I've watched people who said vegetarian diet, vegan diet changed their life. So the point of the matter is, forget the internet, and forget all these fad diets and advice people give you. Because it doesn't matter. I'm the same way. I said this yesterday, but since it follows in this quality of life thing today. This past summer, there I was, this suntanned golden god, laying in my lounge chair in the middle of my garden, right? Listening to good music, right? And breathing in fresh oxygenated air, and then filling my little colander with fresh tomatoes, fresh kale, some banana peppers, fresh herbs, oregano, and some other things, and hosing it off in this colander, bringing it in the house and having this fresh lunch, salad, or maybe a high fiber wrap, type of sandwich, right? That was my life. And 2 times this past summer, I ended up in the ER. Right? I'm still here, but so there's no guarantees. There's no magic diet. There's no advice. I mean, you can, if you abuse yourself, forget it. Right? But I'm talking about people. Like I said, there's some people that smoke and drink and they live to be 90s. There's some people that eat fast food and all that kind of crap and they live to a ripe old age. There's other people that end up having a heart attack when they're 40 years old. So the thing is, there's no, you have to appreciate a good day. It's like my teeth. I show this thing. They're white. It's not the greatest mouth, but it's not a bad mouth. You see a lot of mouths of people. Top and bottom, white, and the gums are fine. But I have a bad tooth in the back. It's got to be, that's been a major tragedy. And it's going to cost me $500 to get, when it's all said and done, to have that oral surgery. And that's assuming it all goes well. So how do you explain that? I brushed that spot too. You see? So why are 95% of my teeth white, clean, and my gums pink and perfect? Well, it was basically because of this. I mean, I actually I still have it. It's because as a child that there's 2 metal pieces. There's one lower that's kind of covered by just a discolorization on the wood. But that big one is the one that fell out of that tooth. And that's pretty thick, too. You can't see the thickness of it. You're just seeing the flatness of it. And so that's what happened. And as a child, some crazy dentist, must have carved out my tooth to stuff it with that. There's no way in hell that much of a tooth needed to be carved out. And so now I have to end up with this, not that, this.
Really funny. Really funny. What do you mean I'm funny? It's funny, it's good.
It's not funny. Not funny. I think that scared somebody away. Somebody freaked out. So, yeah. So anyway, yeah, it's craziness, And so there's no guarantees out there. And my thing is to say, look, if our society was structured right, and it's not, and that's why, why if it's confusing to people when you see the teddy bear Game Over and under it talking about the quality of life, the title of the show, it's all about the quality of life. It's not a conflict. It's saying that it's pretty clear that the powers that be have made it game over as far as the way it was, right? And have taken things to a point where everything is anti-quality of life. There's no focus on that. And whether or not this is a concerted effort, and pure greed and profit by big pharma and big tech and big media, whatever it is, we don't know. Who knows? Like I say, you don't know what you don't know, which you can get on the bear, by the way, which I think would be a cool thing to have, just sitting in the living room on a sofa, right? The type of relative kid that might come and visit, they're not going to be able to read it. But for other people, I think they'll get a kick out of it. Every time I've worn the shirt, you don't know what you don't know, I've had people like doctors and other people admire it. They liked it. In fact, I'm thinking of giving one to one of my doctors, as a present. So, that's just the thing, man. Oh, and 20% off these things, by the way, from now and through next Wednesday. So that bear is $19.99, 20% off. We're talking about $16. Yeah, there'll be some shipping charges, but $16. I mean, that's just too cooler than cool. I'm getting one. Anyway, you'll be seeing it here in a week or so, however long it takes to ship. But no, you have to, you've got to take every day as it is, and you've got to understand that, the powers that be don't want, they're anti our quality of life. They're only concerned with their quality of life. They're flying 400 jets using all this carbon, based fuel to go to a conference that's based on getting rid of carbon-based fuels. Now think of the hypocrisy of that. And meanwhile, they're there and they're at cocktail parties and they're enjoying themselves and all this kind of stuff. So they care about their own quality of life, but they're over there making things to make our quality of life, as bad as possible. So it's game over if you're thinking that the status quo, the way life has been up to this point or up to the past couple of years, forget it. So freedom is fun if you want it to be, right? It's like that line from John and Yoko, war is over if you want it, You have to want it, And there's no guarantees in this life. And it looks to me like big pharma and, big tech and the corporatocracy, they have it out for us. They don't want us to have a good quality of life. It's not profitable for them. It's like people, if you watch I was watching a little bit of the movie. There's been some decent movies out there. I don't agree with everything in them, but if you've seen that Zeitgeist Moving Forward, I think you watch it free on YouTube. Zeitgeist Moving Forward. And you might not agree with everything that's in that movie, because, but, there's a lot in there. There's a lot of eye-openers in that. And it's the idea that, the profit motive by, greed as opposed to profit, extreme greed, that's the most important thing by the powers that be. It's not a matter, and it's not as if the government should provide for us necessarily. I think it's nice that we have a safety net. I'm all for it. In a wealthy nation, But it's good. It's good that we would take care of someone who, has a problem, right? Legitimately, needs a lift up, a hand up, not a hand out, a hand up, as they say. But at the same time, this ridiculous corporatocracy, this corporate greed, and this media lies and this crazy world. I mean, this obsession with news stories that are absurd and filling the minds of children with revisionist history and all of this craziness. And everybody's in this whirlwind. So it's game over when it comes to the status quo, when it comes to the education system, when it comes to, the media, when it comes to the government, which I call the corporatocracy. It's game over. You have to make your own, you're in charge of your quality of life. You're in charge of your life. You got to take charge of it. That's why in my book, Then What, which is, I have some things in there where I talk about this kind of stuff. I'm no great author. The last 2 books that I've done, I didn't want to show you that. I've got Codex here, all right? And I've got, Then What there. These are my last 2 books, which I highly recommend you get. They're mostly flow of consciousness. And they're self-published, and they have some, weird typos in them, here and there. And there's nothing I could do about that at this point. I mean, I could and I couldn't. It's like I don't have Adobe software anymore, and I think I made the one in Adobe InDesign, the Codex one. So I couldn't even open the file anymore because I don't pay their monthly extortion fee for the cloud service. Even though I own an older version of Adobe InDesign and Photoshop, they won't open newer files, okay? And I paid for it, and I have the box and the CD and the serial number, So I can't fix these little typos that I missed somehow. I don't have a personal editor, I went through it, I edited, but it can't be a self-editor because what happens is you tend to read over. The only way to truly proofread is to read the entire book backwards. That's what we used to do. So that used to be one trick when I used to do proofreading along the way. I've had so many jobs, like in printing and stuff like that. Is you have to, dismantle the paragraph, dismantle the sentence, and literally it takes hours. For even used to take hours for a brochure, or an hour for a brochure, or something like that. So let alone a book 120 pages or something like that. It's just not practical. So I do the best I can. But what I'm getting at is that I write about this stuff. I've written 50 songs about this stuff. I've done well over 300 shows this year alone about this stuff, 2-hour shows. And everything you need to know is here. And I'm not the only one. There's other people out there talking. But, you have to seek it out. So you have to seek out the truth. You've got to disconnect yourself. You got to cut the cord from the media and this obsession with the news. You've got to break free of this antiquated device, which a year or so from now won't even be, won't be big. It's not going to be the center of everyone's life. People think it is. It's not going to be. No. There'll be all kinds of other things. I noticed last night, you could download the TikTok app with your Fire Stick, Amazon Fire Stick, and watch it on TV. Little hint there for somebody who has a Fire Stick. And, and you can record these TikTok things, as they come in with these the metaverse, formerly Facebook meta stuff. As they come in, they have these Ray-Ban glasses, right, that have the camera, the sound going to your ear, right? As these things become more and more advanced, and as I mentioned yesterday, I saw Zuckerberg talking to his at this investors meeting, that they're spending billions and billions of tens of billions of dollars a year, over $10 billion a year, and they've been spending this now for years. And the research they're testing that in house. They're testing the stuff, their developments already. So it's not out to the people. But their goal is voice activation, AI, AR, VR, the whole combination of this whole thing. And that's where things are moving. And people need to accept that. And so certain things will remain. People think, well, without the smartphone, what'll I do? I won't be able to have selfies or to do TikTok or Instagram. It's like, yeah, you will. You'll just have it. You'll be free. I showed you that was it last week or was it the beginning of this week? They have a contact lens thing for people who wear contact lenses, right? That is like a computer. It's basically, if you've watched Terminator, it like those contact lenses are like Terminator things, and you put an in-ear like something that someone who's hard of hearing has, instead of these things dangling down like Apple's stupid ear pods or whatever. These things just go in the ear. Can't even tell you have them. And you got a contact lens on. And you walk around in the world. And if you want to be in VR, you could just, lay back in a chair or your bed and close your eyes, and you could be in VR mode. And if you want to be in AR, augmented reality, walking down the street, or driving, you can see it'll be like AR. Meaning there'll be an arrow will point out, that there's the place, there's take a right here. Here's, the temperature outside, traffic jam ahead, whatever, or gaming, it's like that Pokemon Go was basically what they called AR, augmented reality, but you had to look through your phone. So all these things are like here now. And they, like I say, those Ray-Ban glasses, which I also showed on that same show, you just have to go back and find it. Fast forward through some of the old, shows of the past week or so. I'm not going to repeat it and go bring up the stuff again. But it's here. It's already here. It's being worked on. And it's beyond, that's what I was trying to say. In that same show, I mentioned that like Elon Musk's idea of drilling a hole in your brain and putting in, this neural link is more of a medical procedure for people who have medical problems. It's not the future it's not man and machine or woman and machine. You see what I mean? There's too many people looking at that in the wrong way. That's not AR, VR. That's not the future. That's healthcare industry. That's offering services for people that maybe have sight problems, motor problems, and some other serious diseases. And hats off to him for that. And and I think that he'd be best to push that more. I think he's like too much going after the VC and, the stock people by trying to make this seem as if it's that kind of technology. But the fact of the matter is, I think he'd be better to position that as what its true benefit would be, and that would be in the healthcare industry, as they call it. I hate hearing that word, healthcare industry. Because it's not this idea of healthcare. And I was getting back to that movie, the Zeitgeist Moving Forward and stuff. And they had, there's a section in there, that's the reason I brought it up, where they were talking about there's just too much effort into treatment and profit on treatment than there is to cures. It's like this thing that we've been going through that we now know has been around for 2.5 years, and who knows how longer it's going to go, indefinitely. And let's just hope that this one that has the potential to take out 15 to 20% of the people doesn't appear this winter, because we're screwed. But the idea is that we need to, if we had a good healthcare system, if people cared about the quality of life, we would be trying to cure cancer, not treat cancer, cure heart disease, not treat it. You see? It's like yesterday's show I mentioned, what are you supposed to eat? And in passing, that show is about other things, but in passing, I did mention that all of these things that are bad for you are, when you turn on the TV, I always look up because I have a TV on the wall up there. All right. Which I haven't turned on in a month or two. It's not really hooked up to cable, but I can get the Apple. I have an old Apple TV thing to it. Anyway, so I look up there. Sorry. If you're wondering why I do that. I've said that before. But it's like I want cures instead of treatments. We don't want a healthcare industry, right? We don't want people making hundreds of billions of dollars on treatments. We want there to be cures. But see, there's no, this is the thing. These companies, these trillion-dollar companies would go out of business and all these people would be out of work. It's like big government. That's why there's the whole concept, that joke of draining the swamp. I say this all the time. Is just, that's such a deception. The government is a giant bureaucracy of millions of people. And then subcontractors, below that. It's a behemoth. You can't drain it. It's like one of the biggest employers in the, in fact, in like many states or in local government areas, the government is the biggest employer. Right? So, draining the swamp, what are you going to do? So you need I'm using this word paradigm shift in many different ways in today's show, but yeah, it would require a paradigm shift. And that's why quality of life, it's all about quality of life and game over on the teddy bear where they merge and come in, because there's not going to be a paradigm shift. I mean, this is today's news. Okay? It's just all gobbledygook. All right? So it's game over. Right? They're treating these diseases. Right? But a couple million people a year are dying of heart attacks, cancer, diabetes, all these, like all kinds of weird diseases. I've had the CDC list up so many times on this show. I'm shrinking again this chair. No one has bought anything, so I cannot buy a new chair. Anyway. So, it's up to you. But freedom is fun. And my advice to you, if you're approaching the retirement age, retire early and enjoy life before you start having ailments, which are inevitable. Or it's a crapshoot. You may not. Some people are lucky. But that's like, it's a law of probability and statistics. All right? It's how insurance companies figure out, their schedules and stuff. It's all based on probability and statistics. And probability and statistics say that you're probably not going to live past 77 right now. That's the that's the way it's set up. You may live to be 97, but you also may may not live, to be 47. See, I mean, this is just the way it is, probability and statistics. So, and that's despite your diet choices and your exercise choices and your lifestyle decisions. Like I say, unless you go on, a downward spiral. I mean, a 20-year-old's OD because they're drug addicts. That's a different story. But I mean, in general, you could eat well, exercise well, and still keel over young. And you could eat fast food. And what I was saying about that burger, show, which was yesterday's, is that when you watch TV, to finish that thought, people keep coming in and out. It's ridiculous. It's like all of the things that you're not supposed to eat, right? That if you look at these things, don't eat this if you've got, problems, are all the things that are advertised on TV and approved by the FDA. You see? So do you think government is the answer? Right? Do you think the bureaucracy is the answer? Do you think the corporatocracy, the powers that be, are the answer? No. Okay? Big pharma, big ag, big media, big tech, they're just in it for the money. And it's like, okay, fine. They hold, big tech holds back technology, right? Because they want to just like throw out little pieces here so they can maximize their profits. Think about like a company like Apple. They always make a big stink in their presentations about how they're like almost 100% recyclable, and their footprint, carbon footprint, people are going for zero carbon footprints and stuff. But what they don't tell you is that every year they want you to buy a new iPhone so that the thing becomes, it's basically planned obsolescence. And that all this stuff doesn't really get recycled. Not everybody takes their phone in and trades it in. Not everybody does this. People throw stuff in their garbage. You know what I mean? Computers break down. You're not supposed to put like certain monitors and things in trash. People sneak electronics and stuff that are bad in, they just throw it out. An awful lot of recycling. They have these recycling days when they pick up your recycling. You think it's being recycled, but when it all gets thrown in the dump. Because the cost of recycling, the city doesn't want to pay that, so it just gets, thrown in the dump. And then you've got these garbage barges off of New York and New Jersey and stuff, and they just dump that stuff. They go out to sea and dump it. And it's not necessarily sanctioned by the government, the state governments, but the garbage companies basically get a small fine. It's like Congress. If you do insider trading, the fine is $200. But Nancy Pelosi's husband made $5 million on an insider trade with, based on Nancy Pelosi's information she got from Apple. And she, and they're not even talking about going after her. All right. But if she was brought the ethics committee did, bring her in, she'd get a $200 fine for making $5 million on insider trading. So it's game over in that sense. And that's how this all comes together. So the quality of life is what it's all about, but it's up to you. And you have, and freedom is fun. And you have to, as best as possible, disconnect and stop hanging on to life, in servitude to this, behemoth, this corporatocracy that's run by an organized crime syndicate. So you could buy bright and shiny objects and, whatever. It's the system, it's a paradigm shift has occurred. And what you need to do is look out for yourself, hope that your health, hope that they don't release anything. You know, it's almost like this idea of, you know, maybe they know something, you know, this lockdown idea, this distancing and stuff. It's like, it's a paradigm shift. Because if these kinds of, you know, illnesses can, you know, float around and 2.5 years later, basically get worse, you know, in intensity of, you know, and the magnitude of who it can affect, you know, it's like you almost need to live in VR, AR, right? I mean, it's horrible. I also watched that same movie, you know, they were talking about the need for hugs. They were really talking about children and like infants and stuff, that how babies, premature babies, that if they were just, their head was, you know, they, you know, if the nurse or the mother or somebody just like patted their head, you know, once each day, they were more likely to have better brain development. And babies that were not touched actually, you know, died. Like, it's almost like we need that as humans. And so children that are abandoned, and it's an interesting idea, you know, this nature and nurture type of thing. But the idea is, what the point was, they were trying to explain that despite the fact that someone may have a so-called genetic disposition, you've heard that kind of thing, for either a disease or for certain kind of activity, right? It's ultimately what the studies have shown, and what this movie, and you should watch, you know, if you get a chance, you can watch this thing. It's called Zeitgeist Moving Forward. It's on free on YouTube. Pretty sure it was YouTube. I think it was. Yeah, I don't think it was Netflix. I think it was YouTube. But, you know, they go through this, and these are all, you know, professors and doctors and people like that. You know, it's some of those classic documentaries, you know, where it's talking heads, right? You know, and then images of things. But people basically quoting studies and different stuff like that. And it's like, you know, we really do need a hug, you know, like throughout our lives, but more so, it's those formative years, these really formative years that you know, and that people have abandonment issues because, you know, they're thrown into, you know, the system right after maternity leave, you know, or, excuse me, or they're, you know, or early formative years, they're, you know, being kind of indoctrinated and conditioned in a way that, you know, that if they had a genetic predisposition, it'll definitely present itself. But on the same thing, even with health, they explain that there is, you know, like when they figured out the genome, they thought they were going to, this is back in the 90s, remember? They thought, wow, we figured it out faster than we thought, and now we're going to be able to like cure cancer and all these things, because now that we know, you know, we can map this stuff out. And the fact is, you know, there are certain things that were mapped out, like they could find like certain women that had a genetic predisposition for breast cancer, for example. But not all of those women got breast cancer, despite they had this so-called gene, you see? So the idea is that genetic disposition doesn't necessarily mean you will be, you know, a criminal, you will have cancer, you will suffer, you will be antisocial, or you'll be Charles Manson or something. You see? And that this is where society's messing with us right now, because the corporatocracy, this greed of the corporatocracy, this obsession with big media in this totally nonsense diversionary stuff, and their avoidance of things that really where they should be focusing on the quality of life, right? Is a tragedy. And so it's up to us to to make the best out of this life. We really have to. We're on our own. It's sad. We pay taxes. I pay taxes my whole working life. And all of these things. I still have property taxes, school board taxes. I'm paying, school board taxes. I have no children in school. Never did. Never had children. But I'm paying school board taxes, and they're indoctrinating children with my money. I'm paying city taxes, and the city is, doesn't shovel this, doesn't care about, the sidewalk. In the wintertime, I can't walk down the sidewalks, right? They're just covered with ice and snow and stuff like that. Streets. Sometimes they don't even clean the streets right. When on a bad snow. Like this winter, I think we're going to have a rough winter this year. It seems to me. I just got a feeling because I do the weather every day, and and this early frost, it may warm up next week, but it's like this means that we might be in a pattern of like real bad cold, real cold, then warm up, then real cold, then warm up. And things like the Farmer's Almanac and other things like that, we're saying this is going to be a harsh winter. See, you have to look at long-term cycles, and that's what people don't do. I'm running over time. I have to get off here. We'll talk about that stuff at another time. But anyway, I want to thanks for watching, and good morning. And remember, this is a sales thing, but there's 20% off. If you go to my site, TonyCaravanLive.com or ROCKFLUX.com, and you click on the girl, you see the girl on the screen with the hat, the shopping bags. If you click on her, you'll go to a page, and it's just a bunch of squares with all of my various sayings on them and stuff. And you click on that, and it'll take you to a page of like freedom is fun, or, then what, or whatever, and ROCKFLUX. And you can go there and you can find hoodies, shirts, men and women, all sizes. And if you go and look at accessories and go down to other, you may find for some of these things like the teddy bear and stuff like that. Otherwise, you get my book on Amazon, get the print version, then what, or get Codex, and Great Solar Stuff. .com, which has, if we do have a bad winter, it's power, doesn't it? It's not just, you can charge it off of in your house. So keep this thing charged. The power goes out. Guess what? You can just plug in, some key things into that. And while other people are in the dark or don't have this, that, the other, you can continue living a somewhat